No one understands me. I can't trust anyone. Isolation feels safe. I read a ton of these core beliefs here on YouTube, and many times those are the direct result of a shattered childhood. But often people have no clue how much these core beliefs hold them back from recovering their early trauma. And this is why today I made a list of 7 of the most common core beliefs that hinder your CPTSD healing journey. And we also discuss what you can do if you feel that you have such core beliefs. And in the end, we also talk about how to break them and how to get to new, more positive core beliefs and finally embrace your full potential for healing. So let's start. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Robert, and let's directly dive into the question, why can core beliefs actually hinder your healing journey if you have unfavorable core beliefs or negative core beliefs? I don't like the term negative at first because it kind of frames those beliefs. Yes, they're unfavorable, but everything has a flip side. So do those core beliefs have? Well, all of us have specific core beliefs, and those core beliefs are the things that we believe that are true about ourselves. So those things don't have necessarily to be true, but those are the things that we believe that are true about us. And what we believe about ourselves and others, that's massively important. How we feel, how we make decisions, and what we think about us, about others, about the world, obviously. So you could say that the sum of our core beliefs basically is our identity. For CPTSD sufferers, their core beliefs usually circle around inner shame and guilt about themselves or about others, and common core beliefs that people who have CPTSD have are, for example, I'm not okay, but others are. That's typical for someone who has an anxious attachment style, who had an insecure relationship with their caregivers as a child. Another typical belief is others are not okay, but I am. That's typical for someone who is avoidant, who experienced others as threatening, as difficult, or even neither me or others are okay. That's a typical belief for someone who is disorganized in their attachment style. If you haven't watched a video about attachment styles, linked that to you up here and in the description below, watch that if you want to discover the 4 styles of attachment, which also relate to those core beliefs here. And then there's Tim Fletcher, another YouTuber I recommended quite often, and he shows that the shame-based identity is built around the true self. So you have that true self, and around that, in his model, there is this shame-based self, this critic. And this is exactly the location where you find those unfavorable core beliefs. They're stacked around that real self. Those core beliefs are not your true self, are not your true identity, but they are part of this constructed self, which is, for people with CPTSD, as I said, at the core shame-based. Well, what happens if you have those unfavorable core beliefs? First of all, if you have those can stop you from achieving your goals. That's a more superficial issue. It's not really affecting your relationships directly, but what you see here is that procrastination can occur if you have those negative core beliefs, those unfavorable core beliefs. What they also can do is they can make you stop from being actually yourself. For example, make you people-pleasing because you constantly think that you have to fulfill other people's needs. They can also directly influence your relationships. Those core beliefs make your relationships difficult or even impossible. Those are beliefs that result of early attachment wounds, for example. They also can cause chronic anxiety. They also can cause emotional dysregulation or somatic symptoms, as well as flashbacks, re-experiencing, panic attacks. All of those things can result out of your core beliefs. Now, where do unfavorable core beliefs actually come from? Well, I said they come from early childhood. And often those core beliefs are basically just a result of your interpretation of the experiences you've made sometime during your life, often during your childhood. And those core beliefs are usually something that you learned, for example, during the cycle of toxic shame and guilt, because this is where those core beliefs actually are constantly repeated. Let's have a look at the cycle of toxic shame and guilt. When you, for example, sense specific emotions or you have specific needs as a child, you express those needs, you show those emotions, and you get the feedback from your caregivers, from teachers, from other adult people, from other children, and they say, don't do that. Then you learn I did something wrong when I expressed a specific emotion or when I communicated a specific need. That causes toxic guilt, but it is not just the guilt that's the problem, because as it's repeated again and again and again that you do something wrong, if you communicate something, a need, an emotion, a boundary, then at some point you learn, don't be like that. So it actually targets your most inner core, what you believe about yourself. That's your identity. And you'll learn that you are wrong if you have those specific emotions, needs, and boundaries. And therefore you develop a sense of toxic shame here. You develop a shame-based identity, which is nourished by those unfavorable core beliefs. And then you hide specific things, you may mask emotions and needs, you try to adapt to other people, try to be a people pleaser, try to be a perfectionist, suppress those things again, but as you are a human being, as you sense specific emotions and needs, they will break out again at some point. Let's directly dive into core belief number 1 here and discuss that a bit. And belief number 1 is, other people only love me if. Does unconditional love exist? Well, this can be discussed as a philosophical question, but that's probably not necessary here, because for people who suffer from the consequences of a shattered childhood, usually the answer is no. And if you feel in general loved unconditionally, that's an amazing gift, and that belief is not really affecting you. But if not, then your self-worth may even be connected with what you can deliver to other people, and if you can fulfill their expectations, if you can fulfill their needs. So you might be a people pleaser here, for example, as I said. So how do you finish that sentence if I give that to you? You can find out right now. I only deserve to be loved if ... Now fill that gap. If there are some things coming to your mind now, then you have the answer that maybe for you, this is also a core belief you carry around for yourself, which is quite normal for many of us, I guess, but it's often more an unconscious belief that we carry, as well as all the other core beliefs, because core beliefs are always unconscious, but we usually don't ask those questions. For example, this question I asked to you right now on a conscious level, and I invite you to do that right now. Well, for me personally, to that question, there are also multiple answers. For example, if I perform. So I feel like I have to do something in order to be loved. Or if I am happy and positive. This is also something that I learned personally. I always felt as a child that weak and negative emotions were not appreciated, for example. And this core belief, other people only love me if, this hinders us from healing because we always try to perform in a certain way in order to get love from someone else. And it holds down our self-worth tremendously. So you constantly strive to meet others' expectations at the expense of your own needs if you have that core belief. And I know what I'm talking about here. And this definitely can lead to burnout, to a low self-esteem, and to an inability to form real, authentic connections. Core belief number 2, I am bad, wrong, not okay. I think that is probably the most widespread negative core belief here. And I once read a post by someone who came to the conclusion that, first of all, everyone has this core belief in some form. Like, for example, also the most common one, I'm not good enough. It's also mainly this core belief. And secondly, you will also, as a human being, never get rid of this core belief because it is so human. And that's not like a pessimistic point of view here. I don't mean in that way. It's more, I would say, approaching this core belief in a more realistic sense, because as we are human beings and we interact with others and the world, it's quite natural, even in a way, that we sometimes don't feel okay or feel misplaced. So now, this core belief often comes from the experience of being different than others in a way. So that's also typical for people who feel that they're, for example, neurodivergent. When you're on the autistic spectrum, when you have ADHD, when you're a really sensitive person, you might be different, and you have been different as a child already. So you learned that, you got that mirrored from the environment, from other people, that you are different. So this is where it comes from. And again, I want to make that really clear here. It is a normal thing, and I think it's even inevitable that you have this core belief if you are different in a way than others. And we are all different, we are all individuals, so it makes sense that we have this core belief. But it's important to understand that, especially in CPTSD, when you really have trauma as a consequence of those experiences that you made, then it's often about severely feeling bad or wrong and feeling shame around your own identity and how you behave. And that is the problem. Now, how does the intense belief that you are somehow wrong hinder you from healing? Well, it fosters your deep-seated sense of shame and self-criticism instead of your sense for self-compassion and acceptance. And that's interesting here, because you also could say, well, I sometimes feel not okay, I sometimes feel wrong, but well, that's okay. That's totally fine, and it's okay to feel that way sometimes. So this way, you would address this core belief and this experience with more compassion. But people with CPTSD rarely do that. So the main problem with this belief is that you probably don't even believe in your potential to heal. And that keeps you trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage and despair. Belief number 3, isolation is safe. While it's great to have an environment where you feel absolutely safe, only feeling entirely safe in isolation is not a healthy core belief for us social creatures. And I also made a full episode about that. Many of you like that episode a lot, CPTSD and why we isolate. We'll link that to you up here. And I'm also someone who is super avoidant in relationships and always have been. So I had 5 relationships in the past and I all quit them. I quit all 5 of them myself because I thought that I only would feel safe when I'm alone. So I definitely have that core belief as well. And I hear many people saying the same thing. Also, here on YouTube, for example, if I read comments. But at the same time, I personally, and I see that in those people as well, I feel frustrated and lonely. And I think that many people feel frustration and despair and desperation instead of just being happy that they're constantly alone. So it just can't be right that being alone and isolated is the only way to feel safe here. And if you have this belief, it definitely might lead you to socially withdraw at a certain point. And you might also cut off all access to supportive relationships and community, which is also a positive side of relationships, of course. And this is exactly what is needed to find true holistic healing from early trauma, community and safe relationships. So recovering from CPTSD actually requires connection, trust, and co-regulation with others. So isolation, on the other hand, reinforces the triggering of trauma symptoms like hypervigilance, emotional numbing, if you then spend time with others. When you constantly isolate yourself, you then spend time with others, then you're even more triggered because you never learn how to deal with connection, how to keep up a connection and co-regulation. So that makes it even harder to re-regulate and to re-engage with others and life in a meaningful way here. So long story short, and I said that in the other episode as well, the more you isolate, the more you will isolate. And then we have belief number 4. A harmonious relationship is a secure, good relationship. I love this one. I personally had this core belief for 26 years of my life. And during this year, I could finally let it go. Also, a reason why I and so many others constantly quit relationships is this core belief. So I was looking for a partner when I had this core belief who would always treat me with kid gloves. And still today, I sometimes have this desire that there is this possibility of a relationship where you never need to set boundaries, where you never have disagreements about needs, and where you never hurt each other in any way. And this is an illusion. That's not life. That's not how it works. And you know what? That's also great because I also thought those things not just about my partner, but also about myself. And you may also do that because I also thought that I don't need to set boundaries, that I don't need to communicate my emotions or needs. And that's a problem if I think that about myself, because I constantly need that if I'm not wanting to spend my whole life in solitude. Well, I thought this is something you just don't do in a relationship or just don't do in general. Fighting for agreements, setting boundaries. But actually, truth is, a healthy relationship with 2 securely attached people looks like this. Both offer each other to be dysregulated. So both help each other by a co-regulation to re-regulate. If you're needy someday, your partner is there for you. If your partner is needy someday, you are there for your partner. If you are detached someday, your partner is also there for you and the other way around. And of course, you have to communicate boundaries. You have to communicate your emotions and your needs every single day here. And to do so, you have to know them. And if you want to learn how to identify your emotions, how to communicate them, how to communicate your needs, your boundaries, and if you struggle with them, then become a member of our exclusive community today. We have full courses which go into depth about exactly these topics with exercises as well to learn how to recognize and communicate your emotions, needs, and boundaries in our classroom section in the member area. You can join directly at understandable.net/join to get access to all the courses and our exclusive community. And the belief that a healthy relationship always has to be harmonious also brings other problems because it sets absolutely unrealistic relationship standards if you haven't learned how to set clear boundaries, if you haven't learned how to recognize your emotions and needs and communicate them. And if you spend a lot of time on Instagram, for example, on TikTok, I don't do that. I truly don't do that because of that reason. I really have to disappoint you because a realistic couple relationship does not look like those relationships that are shown on the platform. I spent a lot of time on Instagram when I was younger and I constantly saw those perfect relationships and it really intoxicated my brain. I truly believe that's not good to constantly see those unrealistic standards. If you see those things and if you believe this, then this would lead to the avoidance of necessary conflict and honest communication in your relationship as well. Healthy relationships include moments of disagreement and discomfort, which are even great because those are opportunities for growth and deepening trust. And I think that's also one of the main problems in modern dating. That's another topic, definitely. But I believe that a lot of those problems that people are not able to have healthy relationships and to commit to relationships even, those problems have their origin here in those core beliefs. Belief number 5, other people don't see or hear me. This is a typical core belief of someone who is anxiously attached. Usually insecurely, anxiously attached people believe, as I said in the beginning, I'm not okay, but others are. And anxiously attached people who often don't feel seen or heard as adults, they learned early that they have to over-assert their needs in order to get them met. And there are various reasons for that. For example, as a child, usually the caregiver is unresponsive or the caregivers were ill, mentally ill in any form. They maybe were overwhelmed themselves with work, with other siblings, with just things that they couldn't cope in their lives. And therefore, if you had such caregivers, then you as a child learned that you have to scream really loud, that you need many strategies to get the caregiver's attention. And what you did then is, for example, you throw things around, you try to make your caregivers laugh, you maybe even pooped or you used humor or even more aggressive towards your caregiver in any form. You tried everything to get your caregiver's attention in order to get your needs met. And this belief can create a self-fulfilling prophecy here because you either then withdraw from your relationships or overcompensate by trying too hard to be seen and to be heard. And that then leads to frustration and further alienation. If you have this belief, then you might make your own relationships even harder by being too clingy and being too needy. And you also don't allow yourself to have your own social life and independence. The opposite of that belief is core belief number 6, and that is other people demand from me. That's also a typical core belief for someone who has an avoidant attachment style. So the avoidant attachment style is exactly the contrary attachment style to the anxiously attached person. Now, usually avoidant attached people believe something like, I'm okay, but others are not. So they see themselves superior to others, while the anxiously attached person sees themselves below others in case of their status and in case of their okayness in a way. Avoidant people believe that people want their time, want their energy and resources, and therefore often feel overwhelmed by others. They believe I am best on my own and don't like the feeling that others have expectations of them. They believe that they are resourceful and the best problem solvers for themselves. Everyone else, in their eyes, are needy machines. They want their time and energy. What also happens here, or what can be a result of that attachment style and that core belief, a fear of commitment, which I also made a full episode about up here, and I'll link that as well in the description below. This core belief frames relationships as inherently burdensome and exploitative. And for those who believe that, it leads to a resistance against forming close bonds and or asserting needs. Now, this belief also reinforces the idea that one must constantly give to be accepted. So it's related to other unfavorable core beliefs as well. And that therefore fosters resentment and preventing mutual balanced relationships. Well, that's also connected to what I said before, modern dating culture, where people are not able to connect and commit anymore. And this is, again, that's not how it works in reality. Belief number 7, last but not least, I shouldn't do, feel, need, ... Well, you already found this belief in a way in the cycle of toxic shame and guilt. I want to bring that up as well again, because it's so important to emphasize that. So again, during the early years, many of us have been told that we shouldn't behave, shouldn't feel or act a certain way. Now, our caregiver relationship may then have forced us to, and many of us still believe that and do that today, that specific emotions are bad, so we hide specific emotions. That we shouldn't behave a specific way, so we try to mask and act just in another specific way. We shouldn't need the things our body tells us, so we try to not need those things, but our body and mind usually know what they need. Now, this belief suppresses authentic emotions and needs, and that leads to emotional repression and a disconnect from our authentic self. And that is exactly what creates a lot of the suffering we feel when we're having CPTSD symptoms. So many of the CPTSD symptoms that I already listed in the episode, emotional dysregulation, dissociation, flashbacks, panic attacks, those things result out of that core belief and that shattered childhood where we learn that we shouldn't do, feel, or need something. If we don't listen and question that belief, we continuously nourish our shadow instead of embracing our true self. If you want to go more in depth, definitely watch the episode before this one about shadow work. Basically, the shadow, to quickly summarize that, includes all of the repressed parts that our ego does not want to identify with. So what we have integrated, thought, emotions, needs, fears, desires, behaviors, impulses, those are the things that we actually embraced. And everything we haven't integrated, everything we have repressed for years and decades maybe, those are those thoughts, emotions, needs, fears, desires, behaviors, and impulses that we want to push away. Those things are within our shadow. Now, how to break the core beliefs now? What can we do? The easiest way is definitely to make new positive experiences, to override those core beliefs, because with core beliefs, it's all about experiences. When you were a child, you made specific experiences that taught you in order to survive, you need to, for example, avoid to show specific emotion, or don't tell a specific needs, or behave just in a specific way. Also, when I read comments here on YouTube, there was one comment under one of the past videos, and the person wrote that, for example, well, I always try to ask for help, and I learned that asking for help is not a good thing because people react in a negative way then if I do so, or they don't help me, or they say something like, why are you asking for help? Just do it yourself. So this person, for example, learned that asking for help didn't work. So what we see here, if you can't make a specific experience, if you can't override a specific core belief, then it also can be about the people. So you need the right people in order to replace and relearn those specific core beliefs. It's so easier said than done to find the right people in order to do that. So if you want to start right now, I also remind you that we have a community online here where you can start practice to override those core beliefs, and where you can practice to communicate, ask for help, communicate your needs, your boundaries, your emotions, share things in a safe space. So there you have a fruitful online community with exchange with like-minded people, and therefore can practice to override those core beliefs and have supportive people here. If you want to join our community, go to understandable.net/join to get full access to the community, and as I said before, also to the courses as well. I think that's definitely the most easy and the most quick way to resolve those core beliefs. And now in the end, I also just don't want to leave you with all of those negative core beliefs. No, let's finish this episode with a huge set of positive, contrary core beliefs here. And let's start with number one, positive core belief number one. I am loved and valued for who I am and not just for what I do. This belief, if you hear this encourages the understanding that love and worth are inherent and not dependent on fulfilling specific tasks or roles that you might play when you connect with other people here. In this way, you foster self-acceptance more, and also the development of relationships based on mutual respect and authenticity. Number two, I am worthy and whole just as I am. This core belief, this positive one, challenges feelings of inadequacy, promoting a healthy self-image and self-compassion. It also helps you to recognize your intrinsic value and leads to greater confidence and the ability to engage in your healing and growth. Number three, connection with others can be safe and nurturing. I think this is so important, especially for us avoidant people. And this belief then shifts the focus from isolation to the potential for positive, supportive relationships. It helps in opening up to others, reducing loneliness, if you sometimes feel lonely and desperate, and fosters healing through connection and co-regulation. That's very much needed, especially for us avoidants, as I said. Number four, healthy relationships include both harmony and honest communication. And this belief acknowledges that disagreements and conflicts are a normal part of relationships and then can lead to growth instead of just drama. It also encourages open communication and the development of stronger, more resilient connections. Number 5, I am seen, I am heard, and valued by others. This belief counters feelings of invisibility and invalidation, and your presence and voice matters and leads to more fulfilling interactions and the strengthening of your self-worth if you practice this core belief and relearn it. Number 6, relationships are a balance of giving and receiving. This belief encourages mutual respect and reciprocity in relationships, and it helps you to recognize that you're not solely responsible for meeting others' needs, and that it's okay to also express your personal needs and boundaries, because this is what many people who are insecurely attached are missing. And number 7, my feelings, needs, and desires are valid and important. This belief promotes self-acceptance and the acknowledgement of your emotions and needs, and it encourages you to honor your feelings and take care of yourself, which is definitely essential for your healing and personal growth. Now, let me know in the comments below which of those core beliefs actually match with you. Can you identify yourself with some of them? Maybe with none of them? That's amazing. Maybe with all of them? Do you also think that it's okay to sometimes feel not okay? Definitely let me know in the comments. And if you want to support that podcast, also leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And I see you next Sunday for another episode here on the channel. Have a great day.